we need to talk. Your thrifting addiction will not save the planet. Now, I love thrifting.
Thrifted. I thrifted it. I thrifted here. Thrifted the
I love secondhand clothing, upcycling, thrift flips, all of that stuff, so you won't catch me telling you to never thrift again. But even I have to admit that sometimes it's not as sustainable as we think it is. And I think sometimes we're just lying to ourselves. Okay, sorry, I got way too cold. I fear that thrifting has become one of those things that started off as a way to be more sustainable, but is now doing more harm than good. Take tote bags or Stanley cups, for example. Things that in theory promote sustainable habits, but have just gone way too far. So we're going to talk about why thrifted doesn't automatically mean sustainable and how you can thrift more consciously. Let's get into it. If you're new here, I'm Carla. I make cultural commentary videos like this one, as well as vlogs about my life abroad, my crochet updates, my hobbies, all of that stuff. So if you're interested in any of that, please do consider subscribing. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers, which is so exciting. And it would be great to have you join this wholesome little community that we're growing. I love responding to comments. So if you want to give me your 2 cents on this topic, comment down below and we can chat. Okay, back to the video. Speaking of comments, part of what sparked this idea for this topic was a comment I received on this video. By the way, I'm using a crochet hook to hold my mic. Do you like that? We were talking about how the underconsumption trend is mostly just US Americans discovering ways of living that most of the world considers to be normal. This person who commented had moved from South America to the US and was shocked by the level of overconsumption. And what I thought was really interesting was that they actually noted thrifting as an example of this overconsumption, saying that US Americans are replacing buying new clothes with thrifting in the same proportion, which kind of hints to what I said about maybe we're just lying to ourselves about thrifting being the best option. And when I read this comment, my first thought was like, that's funny, because there's been times where when it comes to making videos on YouTube that I've thought like, I'm interested in sustainability. Maybe it would make sense if I took people on like thrift with me videos or show them everything I thrifted that month. But 1, I don't really want to spend that much money. 2, I don't want a bunch of clothes that I don't really need or even truly like. And 3, as you might have guessed, I don't think that thrifting is automatically like the most moral way to consume. But regardless of our opinions about secondhand shopping, this is the state of things. The market value of global secondhand apparel rose from $138 billion in 2021 to $211 billion in 2023 and is expected to reach $351 billion by 2027. And the online resale market accounted for $20 billion in 2023. So clearly the secondhand market is thriving, you know? At the end of the day, that is another form of business and of creating and moving around capital. And thrifting has become more and more popular because of our increased awareness to the environmental impacts of fast fashion and overconsumption, which is a good thing that there's a rising awareness of these issues and that there's an effort to do something about it. In this article, Anna Fitzpatrick, who is a PhD student and project coordinator at the London College of Fashion's Center for Sustainable Fashion, said people are looking for sustainable and guilt-free ways to shop. I thought the use of guilt-free in that sentence was really interesting because it's a very selfish endeavor to want a guilt-free version of something. You know, it's acknowledging the fact that what you're doing might not be good for you or for someone else, but you're going to do it anyway. And you're going to find a way to do it that doesn't make you feel bad, that doesn't make you feel guilt-free. And Fitzpatrick acknowledges this, and she puts it way better than I did. She says that looking for a guilt-free way to shop doesn't challenge our addiction to shopping or the idea that we can have new clothes whenever we want them. And in fact, it enables it. And that is precisely the thing about selfish motives for a greater cause, is that maybe you don't actually care about the greater good of whatever it is that you're doing or that you're not doing, but it's actually just about making you feel better about your choices. I talk a lot about like individual choices versus, you know, big actors on my channel. I have a video about Taylor Swift's private jet and comparing that to people buying too many Stanley Cups. I think that individual choices matter because they shape our culture and hopefully politicians and people who can actually make like big decisions that affect the whole world. But I also don't think we need to be so hard on ourselves. So take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, you know? Like, I think it's good to just be honest with ourselves. Whatever, we'll get more into how to shop more consciously. Even if it is secondhand, you still need to think about how to be more conscious about it, but we'll talk about it later. And it's not just on a personal level that thrifting, secondhand shopping, charity shopping, if you, like me, live in the UK, doesn't challenge our personal addictions to shopping. It also does still impact the rest of the world. It's not like a neutral way to consume. Out of the bag of donations you drop off at Goodwill, only around 10 to 20% will be displayed under the fluorescent lights. The remaining 80% is shipped to other countries like Poland, Pakistan, and Kenya, or turned into rags or post-consumer fiber. And recycling textiles is an energy-intensive task. Another source says 10 to 30% of donated clothes are actually purchased from thrift stores. And this is just for Goodwill, Goodwill receives almost 6 billion pounds of donations a year. That, my friends, is a lot of clothing. And I think for a lot of us, when we go thrifting, we see it as a more sustainable way to consume. We see it as, taking the high road. We don't take into account the fact that what we are donating is quite likely still going to landfill or to very labor and energy intensive recycling processes being shipped all around the world. Or when we buy a secondhand item, that there are 6 billion pounds more of other secondhand clothing items being donated. I'm not talking about this a lot in this video, but I also wanted to note the fact that thrifting has become so popular has actually caused a sort of gentrification of secondhand shopping. Basically pricing people who rely on places like Goodwill or Salvation Army or other charity shops for their clothing. They're being priced out because it's becoming so popular, and thrift stores, want to take advantage of the fact that people will now pay more for used clothing. And I'm in two minds about this because on one hand, clothes are expensive, especially if they're high quality, which oftentimes means vintage, which means secondhand. And I think it's important for people to understand the value of clothing. So I personally don't mind paying more for something that I can get vintage of very high quality because I'm not interested in buying a similar item at Zara. But the last person who needs to be reminded of the value of clothing is a low-income person who genuinely relies on buying secondhand clothing. They already understand the value of clothing because that is what they can afford and they don't have another option. So for them to be priced out because other people don't understand the value of clothes it's messed up. It is. The online resale market has exploded, enabling resellers to quickly scoop up the best pieces in brick and mortar stores and put them up for sale on virtual marketplaces, often for inflated prices. And yeah, I feel like we actually see people talk about this a lot online, like calling out people who are sellers on Depop who mass buy things from Goodwill and then sell them for super high prices on Vinted, Depop, whatever the app is in your region. And yeah, I don't think that's great. I could respect someone who is genuinely on the lookout for niche items, maybe a specific designer. I could see the value in that because that's more of a curation. If you're like sourcing and reselling really niche items, really high quality items like that, they're probably already quite expensive. But if you're literally just going to Goodwill, buying all the Hawaiian t-shirts that are like $1 each and then selling each one for $15, like, what are you doing? You're essentially drop shipping, but with used clothing because it makes you feel better about yourself. And also I want to talk about the fact that sometimes you will go into a thrift store, vintage store, and I can't, thumb through more than 2 hangers without seeing Primark, Zara, Pull&Bear, Stradivarius. It's like, I don't want to buy that secondhand, especially if you're going secondhand shopping because you don't want to support fast fashion. Yes, you're still saving an item from a landfill, and I think that's great. But it does feel a little bit like, okay, what was the point in coming here? And in a way, I'm still kind of supporting it because for all I know, the person who donated that fast fashion item maybe wore it once. Do you know what I mean? Like, great, they didn't just throw it out willy-nilly. But considering the stats we know about donated clothes, they kind of did. And I'm not saying don't donate your clothes. I literally am going to donate clothes soon. I guess what I'm saying is that when you get an item from a thrift store, think about if you need it. Finally, we're going to talk about how you can actually thrift more consciously. And my first piece of advice to you is don't. Just don't thrift. Don't buy. Don't even look at it. I know that this is probably not what you're going to do or what you want to hear. I literally said in the beginning of this video that I also love thrifting, but the most sustainable way you can consume is to consume as little as possible. And that's just a fact. Of course, it's not like, oh, I can't not ever shop again, so therefore I'm just gonna keep shopping fast fashion because there's nothing else I can do. You can take a little bit of that just don't advice and do a tiny bit of it, like maybe do it less. And a way to help you do this is to actually wear the clothes that you already have. I just did a whole declutter and digitizing of my wardrobe, and I made a whole video about it if you want to check that out. But I highly recommend you declutter your wardrobe and understand what's actually in it. And digitizing it could really help you to do that because then everything's in your phone. And like one person said in the comments, it helps you to not then just like scroll on Pinterest or on TikTok or on shopping websites for inspiration. Like you can literally scroll in the closet app and look at your own clothing. Like that's a beautiful thing. So I really think that can help you to wear more of your own clothing that you already have, therefore buy less secondhand, get more wear out of your clothes, all of that good stuff. Speaking of taking care of your clothes, that's another option for lowering your consumption, including thrift shopping. Learn how to mend things, learn how to alter them. Obviously, I'm biased because I like these sorts of things and I'm interested in them, but I understand that not everyone will enjoy sewing. But at least knowing how to mend your clothes in some small way can really help you to sort of fix your shopping habits. Or if you have the means, pay a local tailor or whoever it is to do it for you. And when you do shop, because I know I just gave advice for thrifting more consciously that doesn't involve any thrifting. When you do want to thrift, because I'm not expecting you to never shop for clothing again, I would say to just really keep in mind what it is that you're buying and what it is that you want and or need to buy. So pay attention to fabrics and materials. I recommend always looking for natural fibers like cotton, wool, linen, silk, bamboo. You're probably less likely to find like vintage clothing that's made from bamboo or tencel or lensing or whatever these like newer sustainable fabrics are. But it will not be too difficult to find things that are cotton and wool and silk to some extent. However, tons of like clothes from the 70s, 80s, 90s is polyester, just like almost all of the fast fashion clothing now. So just read the labels, you know? It's not too difficult. It's an extra step, but that's worth it because natural fibers last longer. They're often odor resistant, so you don't even have to wash them as often as clothing that's made out of basically plastic. And natural fibers are biodegradable and renewable, again, to a certain extent. Be conscious of the materials you're buying. 1, for the planet, and 2, for yourself, because they're better quality and they last longer. And I know some people won't like this advice, but make a shopping list. When I go thrifting now, I try to tell myself, like, this is what I'm after. For example, I was in Madrid and I love going shopping there. And I told myself, I'm looking for cardigans. And I didn't succeed completely because I said I wanted neutral colored cardigans. And I ended up getting a cobalt blue one and a pink one. But at least I went with something in mind that like I actually knew I needed for my wardrobe. And I knew I needed it because I've cataloged my wardrobe and I understand what's in my closet. I don't have a bunch of stuff in there that I forgot about. So those are all my tips for how to thrift more consciously. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion. It might be a bit of a short video, I'm not completely sure. But if you did like it, please give it a little like because that helps the channel. If you want to subscribe, that would be absolutely wonderful, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this topic down below. As always, thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!